Hello, my name is Gavin O'Mara. I'm the CEO and founder of FE News, and welcome to episode 2 of Edgy Thinking. This is a co-produced live stream with Edge Foundation and FE News, and today we've got a really cool show for you. We've been chatting in the green room about this before we've gone live, and I've got really excited about all sorts of stuff. Today is around real-world learning and teacher externships, and all around empowering employer engagement. And my co-host today, we've got matching white shirts and everything. We're totally coordinated. It's amazing. Is Cherokee Bradley from Edge Foundation. Cherokee, how are you?
Hi, Gavin. Absolutely great. Thank you for inviting me today. This is wonderful. Lovely to be here.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to today, and I know all of the run up we've been chatting through on the build up to this show. This one has been one I've been really looking forward to, and we was having the pre-production meetings and all the rest of it have been really cool. A couple of things, and I think what would be really good is just to break this down for people and is to really make this really accessible for all. Could you explain what is real world learning?
Sure, yeah. And real world learning, it actually comes in many forms. So it can come into schools in many forms. But literally it involves intentionally designing the curriculum so it's relevant and contextualized and includes authenticity. So it's making learning meaningful and inspiring for students, really. And employer or community engagement is absolutely essential to ensure that students gain real-world authentic experiences. And it can happen both inside and outside of the classroom. It really brings the curriculum to life and gives teachers and students and lecturers opportunities to expand their knowledge, their understanding of their own subject through employer engagement. It turns that understanding how subjects used and applied in the real world. So it's really contextualizing our learning for students and bringing that real world examples into their learning and really, highlighting what skills and behaviors are required, not only just knowledge.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And can you explain what teacher externships are? Because this is a term I hadn't come across before. We were doing co-production, and I think this could be really handy for a lot of the audience out there to be able to understand what teacher externships are. And then let's bring in two really cool guests, and then let's sort of flesh it out and see what's next.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Teacher externships really empowering the teachers to embed real-world learning into their curriculum. So it gives them the opportunity to actually go out into the workplace, to experience the workplace, to interact with local employers, to observe how their subject is used in business, to discuss different career pathways, link their subject back to that industry, but also highlights the skills and behaviours that are required within business so they can bring that back to the classroom for students. It really does help support Gatsby Benchmark 4. Those people in education can understand that really well. Gatsby Benchmark 4 says all teachers should link curriculum learning to careers. And it really does empower them and give them confidence to be able to bring that back and embed real world learning into their curriculum and inspire their students.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. I think it's just really helpful to put that into context and then to sort of then bring in our two really cool guests. And these are Cassie Gramer from School 21 and Stephen Graham Swales from Silverdale School. I welcome and thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Hi guys, thank you.
Cassie, can we talk about real world learning and what you guys are up to at School 21? It might be an idea to explain to everyone what School 21 is if they haven't come across it, because School 21 is quite cool and has been goes at stages, appears being in the news a lot, doesn't it? If you know what I mean. And it'd be really cool to maybe explain School 21 just briefly, and then let's talk about some real world learning.
Yeah, of course. So School 21 is a pioneering school in Stratford in East London. We were founded almost 10 years ago, so in 2012, by one of our founders is Peter Hyman, who's now the director of our trust. And Peter and Ollie and Ed, who founded the school, really wanted to do education differently. So we're a free school. And we are now a 4 to 18 school. So we have students from reception all the way to year 13. And we're really focusing on trying to develop the whole child. That is our aim. That is our goal. And to do that, we kind of take some focus away from assessment and put more into things like real world learning. And how real world learning kind of came to be was that we had projects, and project-based learning was something that was really important to us. And we've done since the school's inception, starting with kids in reception and all the way through to year 13, everybody does projects. And those have traditionally been planned by teachers. They are usually interdisciplinary. There'll be some external input or an external audience. And then we realized in 2015 that by the time our students are in year 10, they have the skills to kind of work on a project, work as a team. And we want them to do that outside of their comfort zone and outside of the classroom. So not with teachers, but with employers. So we reached out to local employers, people from all over London. Now we're actually working with employers kind of in different parts of the world now that things have become virtual. And that's really exciting. And basically we have our year 10 students and our year 12 students who go out one afternoon a week for the entire year. They do 2 projects over the year. So that's usually about 17 weeks each. And they spend an afternoon a week in a small team working with an organization to help them solve a real problem. These organizations vary massively. So we work with kind of local arts organizations or charities, but also kind of big accountancy firms in Canary Wharf or banks or West Ham Football Club, kind of everywhere that our students might be interested in going into. And they go to these businesses, they ask them, what can we help you with? And they do a project and they solve a problem. So we have some students last year worked with HSBC to identify implicit bias in their hiring practices and kind of advise them on how they could change that. Or we've got students that go to a local nursery and they're working on how we can instill a love for reading with children at a very young age. So working on developing a literacy program for really early learners. So these are things that kind of can cater to students no matter what their interests are, what their ideas are from their future. The most important thing about it is that they have a chance to go out of school to experience the real world and also make an impact. They are doing something that isn't going to be kind of put in the bin at the end of the day or at the end of their work experience week. They're doing something that's actually going to be used by that organization. And that in itself is just extremely empowering.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really, really cool. Stephen, could you explain, your role? It's very much a classroom in the background to you. You can see Cassie's in her office with people milling around in the background, but it's great that you've had to take time out from your day to day, Stephen. Could you explain your role at Silverdale School and then your sort of experience around teacher externships and how you better bring that back into the classroom?
Yeah, so Silverdale School is a specialist school for children with SEMH or needs or autism, and I lead on science in both parts of the school. And basically one of our core values, it sounds a little bit like kind of School 21, is we have a strong belief that all of our students should one day go out and hopefully being able to engage in what the careers they're choosing, but we have a big focus on STEM because that's something we're passionate about. I was lucky enough to do a teacher externship program 2 years ago, supported by the Edge Foundation, and I went out to work with a company called Osbit, who work in renewable energy sector in the northeast. So we're based up in North Shields, and it's obviously that's a big part of our kind of local industry. And I went out with a number of different teachers and was able to engage in an externship program that I could bring back to school and deliver in both our sites, our SEMH site and our autism site. So that was really empowering for the students, but also for me as well. You know, it informed my own planning and my teaching and some of the things that I wanted to pass on to the students. It was also nice that I could see developing in my own practice. So we looked really at like that kind of engineering plan do review cycle, and that really influenced how I was able to lead the lessons, but also give learners who traditionally have very strict rules because of their additional needs the opportunity to kind of maybe break out of that and think about doing something and building on it again. And the engineering process itself has been a really positive and empowering thing for them to engage in something practical, something meaningful, and something they can have a bit of ownership over things when it goes wrong as well as when it goes when it goes well. That's something that's really helped the pupils I work with.
Yeah, that's really cool. Cherokee, this is really cool stuff, isn't it? What do you sort of see that everyone can learn from the experiences that we've seen from Cassie and Stephen, and what we can sort of, it's not just in schools and with teachers and learners, but it's also bringing in it's that amazing triangle, isn't it? If you know what I mean, of bringing everyone and wrapping it all together. What can we learn from this, and how can we sort of make it so as learning is really relevant to all? Do you know what I mean? So it actually goes out, so as when they leave school, that they're work ready, and that teachers are able to enable people to be work ready. Do you know what I mean? What can we learn from this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, really good question, Gavin. And I think there's so much to learn from this wonderful stuff that's going on around the UK, really. There's some lovely pockets of real world learning that's happening in schools, and fantastic employer engagement that's happening out there as well. And I think when you come across that, like School 21 and Stephen, who went out for a teacher externship, you really start to understand how much of an impact it has on the students. And at the end of the day, that's where we really need to be concentrating on giving our students the experiences, not only to have the knowledge, because knowledge is important, but it is essential that they learn the skills, behaviours, problem solving, creativity, teamwork. They've got to be able to learn this alongside the knowledge to be able to move out into the 21st century as where we are now and be successful in life and work. And I think all of these different activities, if you want to call it that, or opportunities or ways of working with students and employers and the community. So, it's not just employers, but it's the wider community can be involved in real world learning as well. And bringing those real life experiences back to the classroom to show students that actually school is not in isolation. So we shouldn't be going to school and be learning in isolation. We should be really encompassing our whole community that's around us and getting to know how we fit within that community. And as we see time and time again, when we look at these different examples, that's the effect it has on students. They then become much more confident learners. They're more engaged in their learning. Their attendance increases. Their attainment increases too. One wonderful thing that a student said to me once, because I said to them, "Did you learn more through this experience?" And they turned around and said, "No, I didn't. I didn't learn more, but I understand so much better." And I think that's the key. It's that understanding of, why do I go to school? Why am I learning? Why do I need to learn this subject? And how does it fit into the real world outside? And when you see these examples happening, it's just wonderful. And I've had the opportunity, and I've been so lucky to be in school, to visit lots of other schools and talk to students and talk to employers. And one employer said to me, which is, we've got to think about the other side too. I think education is absolutely essential and empowering teachers, but we've got to empower the employer as well. And one employer that I talked to about the teacher externship program, as you mentioned about the triangulation, he loved that, because he said, it's wonderful when I get students on work experience, students get inspired, they go back to the classroom, but often then the student loses inspiration because they can't talk to the teacher about that. The teacher doesn't have much knowledge of industry, etc. So he really supported the teacher externship program because it triangulates everything. You've got the student, the teacher and the employer, and they're all working together to inspire and engage our young people to go out there and be successful. And I think, those are the most important things that we can get from this, because ultimately, the more we see real world learning being embedded within curriculum and students gaining really authentic, rich experiences, the better we're going to see our students leaving education. They're going to, more than ever now, we need to homegrown our own. We need them to understand where they fit, what the labour market's like, what skills they're required to be able to move out into the outside world and become successful, not just in the workplace, but continue learning, successful learners, and enjoy the learning process too. We don't want to put them off, as we often do in education. So I hope that answers your question, Gavin, because I could literally talk about this forever.
I want to ask everyone, because how do we get more employers involved in education? Because School 21, I was on a session with Ed Fido before the pandemic, and honestly, it was a massive session, and it was standing room only at this session. There were like 7 deep at the back and 5 in the aisles. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. Ed's a proper dude, but how can everyone, not just real people that have got people with a lot of influence and stuff be able to get more and more employers involved in the education environment? How do we go about doing that?
Cassie, I mean, I can give you a brief overview, but it would be really helpful to hear how you engage with employers too. But I think, there's lots of benefits to employers, and that's how we should address them really, and try and help them see those benefits long term and short term, and but also really make them feel valued. So often in education, we don't make our employer partners or our community partners feel valued, and it's so important that we do, because they really are a valuable member of that community that we're going to pull on their experiences. But I guess from the overarching point of view is, helping employers understand those benefits, such as building a talent pipeline, such as addressing the skills gaps within the sector that they're working, such as raising their profile within their own community, because often, especially smaller employers, don't have much profile. The community don't really know that they're there, what they do, and it's raising their profile, etc. So that's kind of an overarching answer to the question. But Cassie, would you like to kind of build on that and tell us how you engage with your employers?
Yeah, of course. I think that employers are actually really keen to work with schools. They just don't know how. They don't have that in. And sometimes the way that they want to work is a way that maybe isn't the most beneficial for our young people. So it's funny, I had a call with a new employer that we've not worked with yet just this morning, who was like, we want to offer you some careers talks or some mentoring sessions. I was like, that's great. But how about we give you a small group of students that you work with over a prolonged period of time, make relationships with them, and like have them as people that bring them into your professional network. And when they're out of school, when they're in university or doing whatever job they want to do, that's when you can then pull them back into your organization. This is how you actually make meaningful impact on young people. And also for employers, that's what they want. They're trying to diversify their talent pool. They're trying to get the right people in, and you need to start that early. So I think just kind of pitching that, saying, yeah, you could come in and do a one-off workshop, do a career talk. It's not going to be that, it'll be great. It'll be good for the students, but it's not going to be that impactful. How can we engage longer term and starting earlier as well? Like, we have some students that have worked with Salesforce since the time they were in year 5, and now they're in year 13 and they're going off to do apprenticeships there after they finish school. So it is about getting in early and also getting in often. And I think having those long-term relationships is really what's key to kind of having a lasting impact on students, and also getting those real benefits for employers as well.
Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, sorry, Gavin. I was just going to say, just to build on what you're saying, and I absolutely agree that employers are wanting to work with education and education want to work with employers, but never the twain may meet sometimes, and it doesn't quite happen. And I think one of the things that I like to talk about a lot is having really understanding from a school perspective of why you want to engage. So I call it your why. And then once you understand your why, you really need to gather your ask. What is it that you're going to ask them to do? Because the clearer you can be, like you said, you have people that come to you and say, I want to work with you. This is, can we do this? But your ask. You are very confident with that. You're very clear about the commitments that are needed. And that employer can either accept that or actually say, actually, that's a bit too much. But you're very clear about what your ask is. And I think coming back to that, when we think about it in a broader perspective, I think that's where it's essential that we have individuals in education and in schools that are really dedicated to this role, this kind of employer engagement careers role. And when you have that, like Cassie, that's your main job, you have really strong, rich relationships, powerful relationships that are long-standing and sustainable, because you have that individual that can build that. They've really done a lot of work about why are we doing this in our school, and they've done a lot of work about, well, what do we want to do, and their ask. And I think that comes out a lot when I see that in schools, when I've gone about and looked in different schools and spent time. The thing that comes through is the ones that are really successful with real world learning and employer engagement have a dedicated member of staff who were able to do that on a full-time basis. It's a difficult thing, because all of our schools want to offer the best education as they possibly can for our students. We know that. But if you just actually committed to that individual and made that brave choice, because I think from a leader's perspective, I think it is a brave choice. But the benefits you gain from that are just absolutely wonderful, and the powerful partnerships that you actually build through that individual are just wonderful, and you can't replace that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Stephen, can I ask you? Cassie's at an education establishment which is, location-wise, Stratford is actually the most interconnected in London. So it's, HSBC's up the road, everything's all around it. But how about everyone else in the rest of the country? How do we get more employers involved if you're not in the most interconnected place in the capital of the country? How do you get more employers involved?
Well, I think when we were talking before, for us, we have a huge amount of local, probably smaller scale employers that we try and work with a lot at our school. I think when we talk about expanding talent pools as well, one of our core kind of beliefs or principles is that we have a huge, probably untapped terms of talent pool. We have children with very specific needs, but they're also incredibly passionate and talented in some things that maybe our local employers aren't aware of, or have non-traditional routes into further education, apprenticeships and careers. So we do a lot of work with smaller scale companies, the businesses that in our area might not be the size of HSBC, but they certainly are there. In terms of Osbit, when I went out to see them, it was a company that, I'll be honest, I didn't know about, I hadn't heard of. They're relatively small compared to what you might see in London, but they were absolutely fantastic in allowing us to develop a program that was specific to the students that we work with, but also equally impressed by what the students that we do work with could produce. And that's maybe opened an avenue to that employer to say, look, well, this is here, this is available. And I think it's about just building those relationships and making sure that people are aware of what's available both ways. I think we're in a bit of a unique position in trying to do that, but it's certainly one that's working very well for us as a school. We have a lot of students working out with local smaller scale businesses, and that's something we're very proud and positive about.
I really like.
That's really, really cool.
Thanks, Stephen. Do you know what I really love from that is that you have also enlightened employers, which is a wonderful. It's a two-way thing. It absolutely is. But you've enlightened them with the skills that and behaviours that your students can bring to them, which they've never really thought of before. And I think that's also very important that we've got to think about. It's not just what the employers can bring to us; it's what we can give to them, and they learn a great deal also about education, actually, and what they think they may want to offer and how they think they may want to work with education. Once they start doing it, often changes. So that's really interesting. I'm really pleased that you mentioned that, Stephen.
Yeah, it was certainly very obvious that, like I say, that Osbit were working on A-level projects with A-level physics teachers all the way down to kind of primary. So they had a huge, probably lots of variety in the routes of schools that they were able to work with. And I probably don't think they were expecting that at first. I think they were probably expecting to do a lot of more A-level work, 17, 18-year-old university potential applicants. And obviously they've been very successful in working, with some of my students are only 11 and 12 years old. And, I think we've hopefully opened their eyes a bit to what they can do with different schools and alternative education.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about those smaller employers too, often they don't have that, they don't have that team of outreach workers as HSBC may have, but they often have really strong, inspired individuals that working in there that want to have an impact, that want to help. And often, the smaller employers, they're the ones that need to raise their profile much more than the bigger ones anyway. So they're really keen to engage. And once you give them that kind of guidance on how to engage, so you can get some fantastic results from them too. And they learn a lot about the students that are in their own community that they may not have learned, otherwise. So you can get a lot from it, even from a personal level. Those individuals working with students can gain so much on a personal level too. Understanding how they are having an impact on that student and learning from them. And it's just, it can be wonderful if it's done in the right way. And I think that's key, isn't it? Is how employer engagement is how we do that, and how we look at it from a school perspective, and how we look at it from an employer's perspective, and how we respect each other as part of that partnership and as part of that relationship. And if we respect each other and value each other, we can grow some wonderful relationships which have huge impacts on both students and employers at the same time, and our economy eventually too, which is really, really valuable and very, very much needed.
Yeah, just to build on that, Cherokee, it's been really amazing in real world learning when companies get their kind of less senior employees involved. And for them, it's really a chance to try out management, figure out what their management style is going to be, figure out how to work with a team or lead a team. And it's something that we do a lot with early graduates in different organizations that we partner with. And it is so valuable. It's like the very symbiotic relationship. The students get so much out of it, but also it's a way to develop your workforce, the workforce you already have.
Yeah, sure. It's continuous professional development for businesses as well, and for individuals in business. And I see that quite a lot when you have individuals that are moving into school. I used to work with a lot of apprentices, so apprentices would come into school, and like you say, they're building their skills through working with students, which is just wonderful.
Our time's really gone. It's like we could be talking forever and ever. I just want to ask a really quick one-liner to everyone of, if you could dream big, what would you want to see as the next stage of either real-world learning or teacher externship? Stephen, what would you want to see if you could have your ultimate Stephen dream of the way to engage with employers and engage the learners and to be able to change things in the future for the positive?
I think probably, if I'm honest, more of them. This is the 4th school I've worked in, and it's the only one I've had an opportunity to do one in. I think the foundation of the program in which I engaged with was great. It gave my students and me a lot, and I hope that other schools could get engaged with that, especially in the special educational needs sector, if I'm honest, as well. There are a lot of probably further networking and connections that could go into an already existing model that would allow it to expand. I think it is very successful. I would probably hope to see more of that. It's across different age settings and across multiple schools. Just more of the same on a bigger scale for me would be fantastic.
Cassie, what would you want to see? What's Cassie's dream for the future of taking this to the next stage? Because he's already got cool stages already from everyone seeing here. What would you want to see as the next big thing?
I want to see more schools doing real world learning, I think, and I want to see my students have the chance to work with new students that they don't know on their real world learning placements. And we're making steps towards that. With the help of the Edge Foundation, we've actually created a kind of real world learning toolkit that other schools can use to try to implement real world learning into their curriculum. There's going to be some training coming up that I'm going to be running. So we're going to be kind of doing a CPD course on that, live webinars, and I'm going to help the participants kind of get those first roots placed in their schools for getting students on board, staff on board, and getting employers engaged with real world learning. So I think just spreading the word about it, making that something accessible to wherever you are, whether that's in London or whether that's on, one of the Scottish Isles. I want people to be able to access real world learning and do that in an impactful way.
Yeah, Cassie, thanks. Cherokee, what would you like to see if it was a Cherokee dream? And it's going to be a big one, isn't it? I can tell.
This is going to be a big one. This. Do you know what? If we could just do anything, then education policy would support embedding real world learning into every single school from primary all the way through to HE, and they would support and empower teachers from teacher training, which is essential. So we would have this in teacher training. This is how we deliver our education in the UK. It's through real world learning, and this is how we're going to train our teachers to do so. And it would be totally embed within the curriculum. It would be part of Ofsted would be marking this, that they would be looking for this as part of their framework. So yeah, that would be my absolute ultimate dream, would be it's part of education policy, and teachers and schools are supported to do it in every aspect of education.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Our time's gone. Thank you, Tom. Now, thank you everyone for joining us today, live and in catch up. This is really important to be able to actually make learning relevant to our learners, so they can actually no longer say, I'm not going to do this in the real world. That's going to be completely gone in one fell swoop with that. But to engage employers to be able to understand about future talent pipelines, like to increase productivity, to be able to enable communities to come together. I think this is really, really vital and key. And thank you for being a part of that. This is totally co-produced. Cherokee, thank you so much for all of the work you put into this show, and thank you, Cassie and Stephen, for joining us today. Also, in people in the background, Susan, get well soon. Dexter, I know will be stepping in for Susan. Thank you so much for all your support. Leah, thank you so much in the background on FE News side for all that you're doing. Kelly, get well soon. And Finley, thank you so much for supporting us today. This is episode 2, but next week we've got episode 3, and it's Edgy Thinking, 12 noon, learning from the past with Andrea. Now, if that doesn't want to hook you in to make you think what we can learn from a bit of history there, then I don't know what will. And I'll see you next week. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.